Awesome, guys. Thanks so much for that Kara update. Right now, we're going to bring on our next guest. Someone no stranger to FreightWaves Airs. We have Eric Coolidge, our air cargo editor. Eric, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Hey, Anthony. Thanks for having me on the show.
So, Eric, first off, I have to apologize. I did not do my homework assignment of watching the first two Top Guns, but it's on the docket for this weekend. But getting into the story at hand, an update around Operation Fly Formula. Is that right?
Operation Fly Formula, yes, that's the Biden administration's emergency airlift of baby formula from overseas to try and alleviate the domestic shortage, which has been compounded by supply chain problems and then the closing of a major manufacturing plant of Abbott Laboratories because of unsanitary conditions. That plant just reopened, but it's been shut for about 3 months, and that was the biggest producer of infant formula in the country. So families have been scrambling to feed their babies. And so, the Biden administration's taken lots of steps, and one of those is this Operation Fly Formula. And so we've had several flights, handful of flights so far, more to come with contracted carriers by the U.S. military or partnerships with the U.S. government to fly in formula. One of the shipments actually came in on a U.S. Air Force military jet because they couldn't activate or find a commercial carrier quick enough. But since then, FedEx has come in with a couple flights, including a freighter that went into Dallas-Fort Worth Airport yesterday with some Nestle formula. And then United Airlines flew into Dulles Airport in Virginia, right near Washington, D.C., with a shipment from a formula maker in the United Kingdom. And interestingly, United is donating its services and using passenger aircraft, not freighter aircraft or not these cargo-only passenger jets that were used during COVID, but just a regular passenger flight. They have about 20 flights per day out of London Heathrow to 8 airports in the U.S. And so over 10 days to 2 weeks or so, they're going to put these formula shipments on those planes.
Looking at, especially from government policy, and we had a situation where, like with Fly Formula, we're having to fly it in. Has there been any changes in exactly some of the standards and importation of formula from other countries? Because there was a great picture I saw earlier where I could go across the border to Mexico to a Costco and find pallets of formula, but apparently we have to send military jets flying overseas, wasting thousands of dollars worth of fuel to buy from the same manufacturers.
Yeah, that's a great question. I wrote about that a couple of weeks ago. The U.S. market, most of the supply in the U.S. has been domestically produced, but a limited number of manufacturers. Then one went down. So, and part of the reason is that the import regulations are extremely strict. And that's kind of served as a disincentive for other makers to import. And a lot of those are probably justifiable for health and safety reasons, but some question whether, some of the technical requirements are all that necessary. But the bottom line is the Biden administration, the FDA, has loosened a lot of those import restrictions or said we are looking the other way on, import enforcement of those regulations. As long as those foreign providers kind of meet the safety standards, they're going to look the other way on labeling or other issues. So, if they have good testing records, good inspection records, production history, they're letting those in. And so, that's the issue. Mexico, there's some production that comes from Mexico, but again, it's got to be through approved channels.
And Eric, any insight around how much impact has been made so far about importing some of this additional formula? Is it just a drop in the bucket, or are we starting to really kind of see some momentum building here?
Well, I guess it depends how you define it. I mean, it's millions of 8-ounce bottles equivalent of formula that have come in so far and more to come, including some shipments coming next week from Australia. And so in the grander scheme of things, it's probably a drop in the bucket, but especially if you're someone who needs specialty formulas, which are, even shorter supply for people who have kids who have allergies or have certain medical conditions or can't digest cow's milk based formula, those could really make a difference for a lot of families. So, it's helping on the edges, but it's something, just to plug the gap in the meantime. And, obviously anything helps.
You mentioned cow's milk formula. Do you think some of the issues are regarding USDA pasteurization methods? I know in Europe they have a different way in terms of what they define as pasteurization, and they always make fun of American cheese.
That's way over that's above my pay grade. I can't answer that.
I was going on a tangent there. I had to throw it out there just in case. But looking forward, do you expect these flights to continue, or has there been any notable increases with this Abbott coming back online? Is it going to get better, or are we going to be in choppy waters for a little while?
Well, I don't know how long the flights will go on for a little while longer. Abbott just, restarted its plant in Sturgis, Michigan, beginning of the week. So they will slowly ramp up production and start sending product to stores, maybe by the end of the month. So they say they're going to have, more than double. They'll be producing more than they did before the closure, before last year. So that should really help. Some other manufacturers, a couple of the other manufacturers in the U.S. have also increased their production. So, there should be relief coming around the corner. But until then, and for several weeks, we should see some more of these, emergency flights coming in with overseas infant formula.
And Eric, this is definitely a huge story, and we're thankful that you're on to update us on this. But you are our air cargo editor. Any other stories that you're looking at or in the midst of working on right now?
Well, I'm working on, just looking at the air cargo market a little bit. It's softening as every other freight market is for geopolitical and other reasons, inflationary reasons. And so we have some recent data out that shows April was down more than 10% year over year, and also, down a little bit from 2019 levels. And, we know May is also has been down year over year. So, whether it's Ukraine, China, inflation, all those things are a drag right now on the air cargo market.
Was there speaking of air cargo in parts of Ukraine, I know that Ukraine had a big presence in types of air cargo. Is that lack of capacity having a meaningful impact, or are those declines just kind of being absorbed in terms of, oh, well, I'm 10% down, I'm lost a few planes. Okay, let's just see where it goes.
Well, I think if I understand your question, I mean, there was a major Russian all-cargo carrier that basically is out of the market now because of Western sanctions. You can't fly over Europe and the U.S. and can't fly any of their Boeing aircraft. So, they're basically shut down. That was a big loss of 747 and other freighters. There's a couple other smaller carriers on the margins that also kind of forced out. And then Ukraine had Antonov Airlines was they weren't a big company, but they had really big freighters. They had these like super jumbo freighters, these Russian or Ukrainian built freighters that were even bigger than 747s that have ramp loading on the front and the back. And so they had a handful of those planes, and they're starting to operate, or they've been operating more recently, but early in the war, I think they were kind of out of action as they relocated those planes or used them in Europe for humanitarian-based missions. So both of those things had a decided effect. Not to mention that all the airlines operating between Europe and Asia have to fly around Russia, instead of going over the airspace, and so that's cut down on the aircraft utilization and cuts into the effective capacity.
Awesome, Eric. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we'll be sure to follow up with you on the latest happening, of course, with the baby formula shortage and what's being done about it. Also, Thomas, Eric is now a contributor to our Sonar Monthly Market Update, so If you're a subscriber, look forward to that as well. Eric, thanks so much for joining us.
All right, have a good weekend, you guys.